Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Siddur Masterclass. If you recall, I think it's already a couple weeks back, we looked last time at the middle blessings of the Amida and compared the Musaf Amida and the Shabbat Shacharit Amida, and how the single blessing in the middle is similar, but also different based on Shacharit and Musaf. And we talked about how all the Amidot have either 1 or 13 middle blessings. And that the first 3 and the last 3 are the same for all Amidot, morning, evening, afternoon, regular weekday, Shabbat, Yomtov, Musaf, Shacharit, doesn't matter. First 3, last 3 are the same. And only the middle changes. It's got 13 on a regular weekday, and then on all of the other days, it has a single blessing in the middle that is unique to that day. On Shabbat, it's Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Praised are you, God, who makes Shabbat holy. That makes sense. What I want to do today is to start a shift over the next few lessons towards Yomtov, holidays. And the aspects of our regular service, particularly our Shabbat, our morning service, the Shacharit service, on Yom Tov, on holiday, as opposed to on Shabbat. And the things that we do differently on holidays than we do on Shabbat. So if you have your Siddurim, I'd like you to look at page 304, or 303, actually. What we're looking at now, this index here, is in the Siddur Lev Shalem, the current Siddur of the conservative movement. On page 303, there's this index to Yom Tov, festivals. And you can see all of the special or the particular prayers for Yom Tov. There's the festival Amida. That's part of what we're going to start with today. There's the ceremony for waving the lulav, which we do on Sukkot. There's Hallel, which is said on all of the Yontifs. There's the festival Torah service, which is different than the Shabbat Torah service and includes the Yizkor service. There's the Musaf for festivals, which is different from the Musaf for Shabbat. And then there are the special editions for specific holidays and at specific times of year. Things that are added things that are added on different occasions, like when we start to pray for rain, or the Hoshanot and the Hakafot that we do on Sukkot and Simchas Torah. Now, just to highlight in our Siddur, there's some nice written introductions and summaries and presentations of different aspects of the of prayer life, including this very nice introduction to the festivals. And I recommend this, both as you come before festivals and Yom Tov, but also just when when you're distracted or bored in shul, right? These are here so that you have them to read. And I highly recommend it. They tell you things about the individual holidays, Pesach and all of its customs, Shavuot and its customs, Sukkot. It's very, very nice. Okay, now, here is the festival Amida. And you can see that Mariv, Shachrit, and Mincha, they're going to present all of the regular Amidot together. I'll say more about that as we go through, and you'll see what I mean. If you recall, these first three blessings are all the same. Magain Avraham Ufoked Sarah, you God, the shield of Abraham, the guardian of Sarah. We recall God as the guardian of our ancestors, God who gives life to the dead, Mechayeh Meitim. We talked a lot about what that meant last time. And Ha'el HaKadosh, God after the Kedusha. Here's the Kedusha on 308, and at the bottom of 308, Ha'el HaKadosh. Then we have the fourth Brachav, here on page 309. And just like Shachrit and Musaf for Shabbos, this is going to be specific to festivals. You have chosen us from amongst all the people. Ata bechartanu mikol ha'amim. You loved us and you wanted us, you distinguished us through the mitzvot, drawing us close to your service and calling us by your great and holy name. The Jewish holidays, obviously, are unique to being Jewish. And then we say, Vatiten lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava. You gave us, Adonai, lovingly, you bestowed on us festivals for joy, holidays and occasions to delight in. Mo'adim l'simcha. It's a phrase I'd like you to be familiar with. A mo'ed is a holiday, an appointed time, a set time of the calendar, a date. Mo'adim l'simcha, festivals for simcha, for joy. Chagim uzmanim l'sason, holidays and occasions for celebration and delight. And then, depending on what day it is, you say the particular day. At Yom, the day of Chag HaMatzot for Pesach, Chag HaShavuot for Shavuot, Chag HaSukkot for Sukkot, and Hashmini Chag HaAtzeret for Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeret. Mikra Kodesh Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. And this is kind of how it goes when you sing it in shul. Vatitein lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava, mo'adim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom, and then I'd fill in, chag hamatzot hazeh, zman cherutenu mikra kodesh, zecher litziad mitzrayim, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu. And then we add this paragraph here, which also, as you can see, has specific references to the individual holidays. There's two paragraphs, each of which is the same for all the holidays, except for the, fill in the holiday depending on what it is. And this is what's called Ya'aleh v'yavo. Have you ever heard that expression? Ya'aleh v'yavo. This is added even on Chol HaMoed, even on the intermediate days of the festival, in the morning services. And it's one of the principal prayers of the holidays. Our God and God of our ancestors, may your consideration, may the thought of us rise up, ya'aleh, v'yavo, and reach out to you. Hear us, attend us, accept us, and respond to us. Keep us in mind, and keep in mind our ancestors as well as the Messiah, the descendant of David. Right? This is a common prayer rhetoric. Remind God of the covenant. Remind God to consider us. Remind God of King David and the Messianic line. Remind God of Jerusalem and the holy city. Remind God of the ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All of this is a sort of rhetoric to appeal to God. Respond to us and deliver us with goodness, compassion, love, life, and peace on this festival of ... Remember us for good. Respond to us with blessing. Redeem us with life. Show us compassion and care with words of kindness and deliverance. And have mercy on us and redeem us. For our eyes are turned to you, for you are a compassionate and caring sovereign. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu, ya'aleh v'yavo v'yagia, v'yira'eh v'yiratze v'yishamaha, v'yipaked v'yizacher zichronenu ufikdonenu, v'zichron avotenu v'zichron Mashiach ben David avdecha, v'zichron Yerushalayim ir kodshecha, v'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha, lefleita letova, lechein ulechesed urachamim, lechayim uleshalom, b'yom chag hamatzot hazeh, zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo letova, ufokdeinu bo livracha, v'hoshienu bo lechayim, uvidvar Yeshua v'rachamim, chus v'chanenu v'rachem aleinu v'hoshienu, ki elecha einenu, ki el melech chanun v'rachum ata. This is the last of those 3 paragraphs. And it asks God to lift up for us the blessings of this particular holiday. Grant us the blessing of this festival. Make us holy through your mitzvot. Again, we recall the ancestors. Fill our lives with goodness and purify our hearts to serve you. And then we conclude, not Mekadesh HaShabbat, like we do on Shabbat, but we say, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmani. Praised are you, God, who makes us, the Jewish people, Israel, and the festivals holy instead of the Shabbat. And then the last 3 blessings are the same as the last 3 on any of the other days. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmani. Now, before I'm going to stop for questions in a second, but you see all these red passages in the middle?
Those are for Shabbat.
Those are for Shabbat. It's not uncommon for a holiday to coincide with Shabbat. And when it does so, you do the Amida for festivals with the inclusions for Shabbat. So you see here, and most of them will, of course, refer to Shabbat. Shabbat, Ahava, that's a Shabbat reference to love, which is a Minucha, rest, Ahava, love, Shabbat. These are all direct references to Shabbat. Okay, I feel like I threw a lot out there in a very short amount of time. Any questions on the regular Yomtov Amida?
So like the fourth bracha, where it has the holiness of the festivals, that's totally different from the fourth, the bracha and the Shabbat Amida, or is it the same except they insert the holiday ones?
Good, so let's go back to Shachrit for Shabbat. That's on 162. And keep one hand on 162 and one hand on 309. That's it? Yeah. Okay. Are you there?
Yes.
So you see on 162 at the top, the first three lines are identical to the first three lines on 309. Ha'el HaKadosh.
Mhm.
Right, that's the last of the first three. Totally identical. Then on Shabbat, we talk about Shabbat. Moses was happy to receive the Shabbat from you on Mount Sinai when he carried down the 2 stone tablets. Are the holidays mentioned on the 2 stone tablets? No, just the Shabbat, right? As it's written in your Torah, that second paragraph, that's the Vishamru. This is a direct quote from the Bible. Vishamru b'nei Israel et Shabbat. You shall keep the Shabbat and keep it holy.
Mhm.
Right? If you flip the page to 163, we have how you gave the Shabbat to us. Not you gave us the holidays, but you gave us the Shabbat. You sanctified the 7th day and called it holy. Now, look on 163 and turn to 309. Instead of Yismach Moshe, Moses was glad to bring down the commandments, we say, you've chosen us by giving us the mitzvot and the holidays and making them holy for us. And then instead of you gave us the Shabbat, it is you bestowed on us, Titen Lanu on 310, you gave us the holidays. Now look on 311. Five lines down into the top of 311. See how it's bold?
Yes.
No.
The Hebrews bowl.
The Hebrew is bolded, and there's English, there's red transliteration on the left side. Kadshenu.
Mhm.
Kadshenu, Kadshenu, Kadshenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tehen chelkeinu b'toratecha. There's a whole melody to that. And in synagogues where they repeat the Amida, very often the leader or the chazan will sing this. It's a well-sung piece. That's why they have the transliterated Hebrew. But if you look, those are very, very similar between 163, Shabbos, and 311. You look at 311, and I'm going to read 163. Kodshenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tein chelkenu b'toratecha, sabenu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libenu le'avdecha b'yemet. So far, identical. So some of it is the same, right? And once you're familiar with this structure, once you know that you hear that kadshenu b'mitzvotecha, you know where you are, and that it's either holiday or Shabbos. V'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava uvratzon Shabbat kodshecha. Oh, now we get a little difference. B'ahava uvratzon. In Siddur language, ahava and ratzon, love and desire, is language for Shabbat. God gives us Shabbat out of love and a desire to give us a gift. Holidays are simcha and sason, joy and celebration. Holidays are opportunity for celebrating. Shabbat is reminder of love. So always when you see be'ahava uratzon, you are talking about Shabbat in the Siddur. Always. When you say simcha v'sason, you always mean holiday. And that's why on 311 it says Shabbat u'mo'adei kodshecha. Not just Shabbat kodshecha, but the Sabbath and the Moadim and the holidays, which are holy.
I was wondering why loving and willingly was just for Shabbat. So that's
it is. I'm really glad it came up because it's some very deep theology, really. Shabbat is an expression of love. It's like the greatest gift you ever had that you gave to the one that you loved. God had Shabbat. What is greater? More valuable? Nothing. And that gift God gave to us. Be'ahava, out of love, and ratzon, will, desire. It was an act of willful and desirous, generous love to give us Shabbat, rather than a presentation of opportunities for celebration. Holidays, right? I mean, that's what a holiday is. Woohoo, right? It's white sails, right? I mean, I don't mean to trivialize it, but like that's really what holidays kind of evoke, is simcha. It's a simcha. Hey, Pesach, Sukkot, right? You're outside in the sukkah and wave the lulav. It's fun. It's lively. It's celebratory, as opposed to more deep, meditative, restorative, which is more the vibe of Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
And the theology of the Siddur is contained in its language. And that could be like a whole article right there. The theology of the Siddur is contained in its language. When it speaks ahava and ratzon, it's really and minucha, by the way, the whole idea of rest, when it talks about and rest as an act of worship, that by resting you fulfill this gift. How do you return the gift of Shabbat to God? Right? If a gift is a social obligation. I give you a gift. You're obligated to me in some way. You have to say thank you. You have to give me a gift on my birthday. If I give you a gift on your birthday, there's a kind of unspoken social equality of gifts. The way you repay the gift of Shabbat is to rest on it, is to fulfill its purpose, which is why on 162 we say, V'yanuchu v'Yisrael mekadeshei shemecha, and the Jewish people who make your name holy rest on Shabbat. That's how we make God holy. Not abstract. Oh, we make God holy like that. I mean, it's not just some philosophical idea. It's a grounded action. You make God holy by resting on Shabbat. How great is that? It's very empowering to your Shabbat practice. Because sometimes it's hard to relax and hard to rest and hard to allow that to happen. So to really integrate that resting on Shabbat is a loving response to the love of God. Well, that makes it easier, right? I mean, like, now I'm doing something which is really desirous. God wants this. Now I want to give it. It's generosity, not just to yourself. It's acceptance of the other's generosity and a return of the generosity.
Kind of gives you permission to.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It's permission to, and it elevates it even. It's permission plus. Okay, let's. I want to also look. Hang on here. At the Musaf for the festivals. So turn to page 343, 343.
We don't need these other two bookmarked here.
If you want.
Trying to decide how many fingers I needed to dedicate here.
Not more than you have.
Not more than I have. Okay. Graduate.
And I'll remember the numbers, so I'll be able to give you the numbers real quick. But so here we are at the Musaf for festivals, right? Musaf is an additional service in the morning on Shabbat and holidays. There on every Shabbat and on every holiday, every Yomtov, right? Meaning Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. That's mostly what we're talking about. Simchas Torah and the Shmini Atzeret. The main pilgrimage festivals are Yomtov. When we talk about them, we're not talking about Purim. Purim is not a Yomtov. It's a holiday, but it is not a Yom Tov. It doesn't require you to rest from labor. It doesn't have Musaf. And it's not biblical, one of the biblical pilgrimage holidays. Same with Hanukkah. Okay, so we're really talking about the biblical pilgrimage festivals. All have as part of the temple service, when there was a temple, an additional sacrifice service on top of the daily sacrificial shacharit service and sacrifice. So Musaf, which means additional, is the service, the Musaf service, is a stand-in substitute, replacement, successor, whatever you want to say, for the Musaf service in the temple. The additional sacrificial service that the Torah describes, and then which was done in the temple in Jerusalem. And here, just like in Shabbos Musaf, you can see that the first, and you know this already. You're already masters, Siddur masters. That's why we call it the master class. You know that there are going to be 3 brachot at the beginning and 3 brachot at the end, which are identical, no matter what the day is. So here are the first 3. The first bracha is the ancestors. The second bracha, Mechaye Hametim, God who gives life to the dead. The third bracha is following the Kiddusha. Ha'el HaKadosh. And you can see, just like on those other 2 pages, where I said the first 3 lines, Ha'el HaKadosh, are identical, 162 and 309, if I recall right. Here too, before we get to the 4th bracha, all that, there's a few differences in the Kedusha, but negligible. I don't want to focus on them because I really want to focus on the bracha. Now, this part, here's the 4th bracha, this middle bracha of the Amida, and it begins very, very similar. It says, you've chosen us, atah bechartanu, all of the same things. You chose us with the holidays. It's similar to the Shacharit version of it here. But then it shifts and it talks about the temple sacrifice and the destruction of the temple. Because of our sins, we've been exiled from our land and removed from our soil. All right. Well, that's very different, right? The brakes should be hitting in your mind. Like, what? That's not, thank you for the Shabbos. Thank you, God, for making us special with the festivals. Because of the hand that was set against your sanctuary. Wow. Because of the destructive hand that destroyed the sanctuary, we're unable to fulfill our obligation in the great and holy place that you chose for your name, meaning the temple. Because the temple is destroyed, Adonai, and we are exiles from the land of Israel, we cannot celebrate the Musaf service. May it be your will, Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors, compassionate sovereign, restores the descendants to their land, and in great mercy that once again you return and shower your compassion on us and on your holy place, the temple, and may you speedily rebuild it and renew its glory. Our Father, our King, Avinu Malkeinu, manifest your glory. Reveal yourself to us. Come back. Welcome back the dispersed from amongst the nations. Gather us back from our exile. Bring us in joyful chorus back up to Zion and Jerusalem, home of your temple, where our ancestors offered you their offerings, their sacrifices, and the Musaf, the additional holy sacrifices as prescribed, including the specific Musaf for this holiday, whatever it is. And you see here, similar structure to the Shacharit, but obviously centered on the sacrificial system and the temple and its absence, and a desire to bring it back so that we can offer the Musaf once again. And there, as you commanded, as is written, our ancestors offered there in love, as it is written. And now what will follow is a couple pages of specific readings for the different holidays. Okay, see all three of these pages, and you see here it says, on Shabbat, you read this. On Passover, the first days, on Passover, the other days, on all the days we conclude, on Shavuot. So these are all descriptions of the specific sacrifices offered for the Musaf of that specific day. So for example, on Shavuot, on the day of the Shavuot, the offering of the first fruits, when you bring your new grain, you shall observe a sacred occasion, meaning no work, and you shall offer a burnt offering, 2 bulls of the herd, 1 ram, 7 yearling lambs, and the accompanying grain offerings that go with those sacrifices, and the liquid libation offerings that go with them, as the Torah ordained, 3/10 for the bull and 2/10 for the ram and 1/10 for the lamb, etc., etc. And a goat shall also be offered for a sin offering, as well as the 2 daily customary offerings. None of that we had in Shabbat. None of that we had in Yomtov. All the regular Shacharit services, no mention of the sacrificial system whatsoever. But here in the Musaf, it's focused specifically on the sacrifices in the temple for those specific days. You see here on Sukkot, there's the first 2 days, and then the first day of Chol HaMoed, second day. So the 3rd day of Sukkot, the 4th day of Sukkot, the 5th day of Sukkot, each has a slightly different one because the sacrifices were different on those days, on each of those days. So you only read the ones for those days. And then after we read all of that, we come back again to Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmani. The same chatima, the same closing blessing that we had in the Shacharit for Yom Tov, we're going to have here in the Musaf, and the same Kadshenu b'mitzvotecha that we sang earlier, we're going to have here, but a little bit different in the lead-up paragraph. And again, a little bit more about the restoration of the Levites and the songs in the sanctuary. And one last thing I want to say, and then I'm going to take a couple questions. You see, we have the 3 closing blessings. This Siddur offers an alternative to the reading of the sacrificial system and a celebration of the sacrifices, where the 4th blessing does not mention the sacrifices. Instead, it speaks about song and praise and prayer, and it gives different hymns and piyutim to sing on the different days. On Pesach, say this hymn. On Shavuot, say one of the following. So if you prefer, either as a congregation or as an individual, like if your congregation says the regular Musaf for Yom Tov, and you don't like it, you don't want to pray for the return of sacrificial system, you can say that other one. Have all the same blessings, fulfill that mitzvah of saying the Musaf Amida, but not talk about how many bulls and rams you slaughtered. If you want to say the other one, either because you prefer saying the traditional, whether you want the restoration of the temple or not, or because you're really praying for the temple, in which case we have to have a different conversation. Okay, you have the other one. So I think that's one of the features, right? That's not a bug of this Siddur. It's one of the features of the Siddur, is that it offers you a possibility to say it in a different way. And I led mostly very traditional congregations in the two big congregations that I led as long-term synagogue leadership. They were very traditional, and we read very traditional liturgies in both of those places. And we very often did a full repetition of both of the Amidas. The Shacharit Amida had a full repetition, and the Musaf, certainly the Musaf, because it has a lot of the special stuff that you want to hear and hear out loud. And I didn't change those places to be this alternative. But I think if I were starting a synagogue, I might say, let's have a serious conversation when we begin the synagogue about whether we really want and we really mean, or we have to twist it so far to mean something different. Do we really want the rebuilding of the third temple? That's a big conversation. And I think a legitimate answer is no, we do not. That's a legitimate and very deeply religious answer. And this Siddur is trying to give you a traditional way to pray without saying something that you really don't mean, not even metaphorically. Like, I can say stuff I don't mean literally if I mean it metaphorically. That's fine. That's called poetry. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I can't really say it in good conscience, even metaphorically, then, I'm stuck. So, this is a development. The conservative Siddur has grown this part of its Musaf service over several iterations. 2 or 3 versions ago, it was a little less of an alternative was available. Some, say this paragraph instead, not a whole other separate Musaf Amida. So I think I don't know what the practice is in most conservative synagogues, but I think the openness to an entirely different Musaf is more than it was a generation ago. All right, any question about any of the Musaf, Shacharit, all of those Amidot and their distinctive middle brachot? No. Uh-oh, I must have done something wrong.
Well, why do you think that in the Musaf service, they chose to put this whole issue of the, and why did they put it in the Shacharit service? Why didn't they put it in, I guess they didn't put it in the Sabbath service because that's not Shabbat, but why?
Well, it's in the Shabbat Musaf, right?
Oh,
it
it
talks
is?
about it, well, it talks just briefly about oh wait, let me just double check something here. Yeah, if you look at 188, And I think we touched on this briefly. If you look at 188, there's an A, 188A, and a 188B.
Yeah.
The conservative movement's publications committee loves A and B pages. This is a big thing for them. They love the A and B thing. And you can see here how it talks about the sacrifices. And how the sacrifices were offered. And there at the very bottom in the small print, on Shabbat, 2 yearling lambs without blemish together with 2/10 of flour, etc., etc.
Mhm.
As opposed to on the other page, which is more poetic.
Okay.
More universal, I guess I would say, than particularist about rebuilding the temple. That's not a universal vision. Look, I think if you think seriously enough about tefillah, you have to have a personal about traditional tefillah. And you don't want to just get rid of all references to the sacrificial service. Then you have to develop a personal philosophy. You have to start to develop a way of thinking about poetic reflections and praying around the temple and its sacrifices and services and what it means to you. So that when you say those words, those things mean something, not just saying them. I think, in the Reconstructionist movement early on, one of the things that distinguished the Reconstructionist movement was getting rid of Musaf. Because they declared sort of philosophically, we don't want the return of the sacrifices. So we're not going to pray for it. By the way, they burned his Siddur in the streets of New York City. Kaplan's Siddur that eliminated Musaf and didn't pray for the restoration of the sacrificial cult. Haredim burned his book, his Siddur, in public, big book burnings. Declared him a heretic. He had like security guards in the 30s or something. I mean, like, people threatened his life because he took that out. He was like, no, I don't want it. And so I'm not going to pray for it. That was some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy enough to get your book burned. But I on Shabbat, the Shabbat Musaf, I say the alternative. I don't pray for the restoration of the sacrifices. I don't want that. It's that was the vehicle of our adolescent adoration of God, and we've outgrown it. We actually abused it to the point where we destroyed it and it destroyed us. And we were reborn through this a much better way. This, by the way, may eventually pass and not be the way we do it either. But it's still the dominant and normative way, is to pray through the Siddur. And God wants tshuva and tefillah and tzedakah. God does not want blood and flesh and fat. And on top of that, there's already a building there.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, one of the world's most recognizable and iconic buildings that stood there for, more than 1,000 years or something. I mean, like, so who are we kidding?
I missed the point. Why do you think the prayer book's going to go? Why did you suggest that?
Well, look, we didn't, Moshe did not have a prayer book, right? Rabbi Meir, the first century scholars, did not have a Siddur. Maimonides had a Siddur, but it was a slightly different one. Already, there are many Jewish communities that pray with very different Siddurim, if with Siddurim at all. The whole Jewish renewal movement, the Reconstructionist revisions of the Siddur, the disappearance of books and the technology of books in favor of other technologies that we don't even know about yet. It may be another 1,000 years, but I doubt it. I would guess, try to imagine 200 years from now, someone actually having a book in their hand in synagogue 200 years from now. It's hard for me to even imagine the world 20 years from now, much less 200, 300, 400, 500 years from now. Siddurim, maybe, but they won't be the same, for sure. I mean, I don't know, books. I think books are durable. I really do. I think books are going to be around for a long, long time. I think the early prediction of books disappearing, there'll be no more books, just Kindles, like no one will have books anymore. Like, and it turns out, no, books are pretty durable technology. They're really very, very good at what they are. And I think we'll continue to use them, but for many people, the Siddur is not a point of access. It's more a fence than a gateway, So I don't know. It's speculative, Arlene. It's not. I don't see a clear. I can predict the future, but 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, what we are doing would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. So I think that's the time frame is much, much faster nowadays. The pace of change is faster by a pace of 10, factor of 10. So if it took 1,000 years before, it takes 100 years now, and it's getting faster. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, you can even look at the generations, maybe 2 generations down from us, and what they're looking for in their prayer and their religion and their, it's not what, I don't think it's what's in this book. It's more spiritual, more introspective maybe, and not just reading words in a book.
Right.
And I mean, even if you go to Jewish camps today, a lot of times the prayers are not the same ritual that we have within our synagogue on Shabbat. So, it won't be a revolution, but it'll be an evolution.
An evolution.
The generations are seeking something that fulfills them from their religious or spiritual needs for their needs. Yeah. I can see
So
that.
it's kind of hard to justify, with the camp experience and the singing and the ruach that emanates from that. It's like, oh, gee, can't we have more of that? Oh no, we got to come in. We come into a service and it's much more structured. It's more the date, or whatever word you want to use, and it's like, whoa, wait, maybe that's why renewal. Maybe renewal. Does it follow the camp experience, and this is what they want in renewal? I don't know anything about renewal, but
I think there are I think it's all really changing, including the very traditional tendencies are changing. Even orthodoxy and a desire not to change is expressing itself differently than it used to. People can say, I'm not changing, and yet, you can see that they're changing. So like you're protesting a little too much. I think there's a decentralization going on. My large perspective is that we're going from a very widely practiced common set of practices to an incredibly diverse bunch of small groups of practice. So whereas before you'd have had 300 people, you have 300 families, they all come to shul for Shabbos services. That's what everybody does. Well, maybe there's 30 or 40 who don't come because they're not, involved. But the ones who are involved, they all come to the same thing. Now, you still have 300 families, but 30 are doing this thing over here, and 55 are doing this thing over here, and 100 come on Shabbos morning, and 20 each are doing 4 different things. But I think there's a massive decentralization of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea where that's going to lead.
Well, which makes the thing of the sanctuary, as beautiful as it is so cavernous. And which, as opposed to a chapel. Right.
We were talking before between before the class started about the challenge of the building is not all the small classrooms, all the extra space. It's the sanctuary. We use the full room, 10 hours a year. Right. It's very complicated. And then what do you do with it? You can't just disappear a place like that. It's actually amazing space. To rebuild a space like that somewhere would be prohibitive. I mean, it would be really hard to do. So I'm not sure what the solution to the sanctuary is. We were talking earlier. I think there are a couple of ways of thinking about it. Maintain it as a big space, but repurpose it. That's one. Or divvy it up internally somehow. Keep the external structure the same size, but divvy the space inside up, somehow radically. One of those two, I think, is what we'll end up doing. Yeah. Do you think that most services should be held in the chapel?
Mm-hmm.
It's a much more intimate relationship extension, as
Right.
opposed to being, like I said, I use the word cavernous. The sanctuary, as much as I love it, it's just, there's not that feeling of closeness.
Right. It's like, maybe it's like, those scenes in movies where they're in these old French castle palaces at this long table and one person sitting at one end of the table.
Right.
It's a gorgeous dining room, but there are only 2 people. Couldn't you just eat in the kitchen at the counter? Please pass the salt.
Right.
It's a lot of
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody thinks the sanctuary is beautiful, and it is.
Right.
It's when I sit in there and, it's a wonderful feeling. It's a beautiful feeling, but the community itself, that the community feeling is lost because it is so cavernous.
Yep. I agree. I think a lot of places that are not as big as they used to be, or that are as big, but that don't have as many people coming to a particular service, are davening in their chapels, because it feels to be in a room for 600 people with 60 it doesn't feel right. Even with 160, right? Like, I mean, in a certain way, like, it would be so much better to just spill out of the chapel, like fill it up, right? Like, where, oh, well, we're full, we got to go to the other room, right? Like, than to start in the big room and still be lost in the space, even with a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the expanding, there's a lot of the synagogues have the expanding rooms where
Right.
they can then open the doors, and that's the beauty of that.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. All right. Well, I thank you all for tonight.